I spent 10 years hating my mother. Then I read her journal. When the hospital called to tell me my mother had passed, I was in the break room at work, stirring powdered creamer into my coffee. The voice on the other end was calm, clinical. She passed quietly in her sleep. Around 2:17 this morning. I'm very sorry for your loss. I didn't say much. Just a quiet, okay, like I was being told a delivery had arrived. I went back to work after lunch. I answered emails. Took a call from a client. My coworkers didn't notice anything was different. And why would they? I hadn't spoken to my mother in over 10 years. She had already been dead to me long before the machine stopped beeping. I didn't cry that night. I didn't call anyone. I went home, microwaved leftover pasta, and watched a crime documentary until I fell asleep on the couch. It felt like any other day. I thought I was free. I didn't always hate my mother. That came later. When I was small, 4, maybe 5, I adored her. I remember her spinning barefoot in the kitchen, humming Fleetwood Mac and swinging her hips like the room was a stage. Her hair smelled like lavender. She used to press her forehead against mine and whisper, "You're my reason." We weren't rich. We weren't stable. But when I was little, I didn't notice. Things started to shift when I was 9. We got evicted. I didn't know what foreclosure was, only that we had to pack quickly and leave our apartment. We moved into a friend's basement. Then another place. Then another. My mother started drinking. Not wildly, not at first. A glass of wine while cooking. Then one at lunch. Then one in the morning, just to take the edge off. I began walking myself to school. I stopped inviting friends over. By the time I was 11, I knew how to make dinner and pay the electric bill online. I knew when the fridge was low, I should ask my mom if she had enough for groceries, but gently, like I was asking for a favor, not reminding her of responsibility. She was still beautiful, still singing sometimes, but less. And only when she thought I wasn't listening. By 13, she was missing parent-teacher meetings and forgetting my piano lessons, my choir practices, my birthday. One year, she gave me a half-eaten cake. Literally. She had started eating it the night before while drunk, forgot it was for me, then shoved the rest at me on the morning of my birthday. No candle. No card. By 15, I knew she wasn't going to change. By 17, I had stopped speaking to her entirely. The final blow came on the night of my senior recital. I was the soloist. I had practiced for months. I wore the blue dress she had picked out 2 years earlier at a thrift store, saying, "One day, you'll sing in this." I wore it for her. She didn't come. After the performance, I waited outside in the cold, scanning every face in the crowd. She never showed. When I got home, I found her sitting on the porch, wine glass in one hand, mascara smudged, sobbing about some man who had left her. I exploded. I don't remember everything I said. I remember screaming. I remember calling her pathetic. A drunk. A failure. I remember her face, blank, tired, and so far away I couldn't reach her even if I tried. And then I said it, "I hate you." She flinched. I packed a bag and left that night. Slept on my friend Gina's floor. Her mom let me stay. I finished high school from their house. I didn't look back. I moved to Oklahoma City after graduation. Took a job at a diner. Then a second job at a bookstore. Then a third as a weekend receptionist. I didn't go to college. Didn't have the money or the interest. I learned to live on my own. Paid rent. Bought groceries. Stacked towels and cups and dishes into my first real apartment with pride. I didn't need anyone. Especially not her. She sent me a text once a year. On my birthday. On Christmas. Sometimes just, "Hope you're okay. Love you." I never responded. I told myself I had moved on. But really, I was just carrying the anger in a different bag. When my Aunt Marla called to say there would be a small service, I almost said no. But something in her voice made me pause. "She left something for you," she said. Said it was important. There were maybe 15 people at the funeral. I recognized a couple of her old neighbors. One of her coworkers from the nursing home she used to work at. Marla sat in the front row, holding a tissue, dabbing her eyes, but not really crying. I wore black. I didn't speak. Afterward, Marla handed me a box. It was small, wooden, scratched on the sides. Inside was a leather-bound journal. My name was written on the first page in her handwriting. For Emily. If you ever want to understand why. I didn't open it right away. I brought it home and set it on my coffee table, staring at it like it might bite. 3 days passed. On the 4th night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat cross-legged on the floor, and opened the journal. The first entry was dated March 2nd, 1994. Emily laughed today. Not a giggle, a real laugh. I didn't know a baby could sound like that. It made my whole body feel like I was breaking and healing at the same time. She went on. I'm scared. Every day I wake up and wonder if I can do this. I love her so much it aches. But I'm alone. No money. No help. Sometimes I go to sleep hungry so I can make sure there's enough formula for her. I read for hours. Each entry was another crack in the wall I had built. She talked about working double shifts at the diner, about burning her hands on the grill because she couldn't afford gloves, about hiding eviction notices from me, about crying in the shower because she didn't want me to hear. She wrote about loving me so hard it made her afraid to breathe, about feeling like she wasn't enough. One entry stopped me cold. October 18th, 2011. Emily told me she hates me tonight. I deserved it. I missed her recital. I was drunk. I don't even remember why. I think I was ashamed. I think I was scared she'd see me and realize how far I've fallen. I feel like I've already lost her. I keep waiting for someone to knock on the door and take her away, tell me I'm not fit to be her mother. And maybe they'd be right. I pressed the page to my chest and sobbed. I had hated her for so long. And she had hated herself too. She wasn't cruel. She was broken. She hadn't abandoned me. She had never learned how to hold on. Further into the journal, I found pieces of her I had never known. She had loved books. Used to write poetry. She once dreamed of opening a small cafe where people could read and drink tea and listen to records. She wanted to call it Lavender and Vinyl. She never told me any of that. Because I never asked. She wrote about my father only once. Said he left when she was 2 months pregnant. No explanation. Just disappeared. She wrote that sometimes she would sit in the bathroom with the lights off, reading parenting books she found at the library, trying to figure out what kind of mother she was supposed to be. I started seeing her not just as my mother, but as a woman. A woman who had been 19 and scared. Who had no parents. No support. No guidebook. Just me. And fear. The final entry was from 3 months before she died. I wonder if Emily ever thinks of me. I wonder if she remembers anything good. I've been sober for a year now. It's hard. God, it's hard. But I keep going. Just in case she ever comes back. I put the journal down and cried for what felt like hours. She had tried. She had failed. But she had never stopped loving me. And I had spent 10 years convincing myself that love wasn't real because it wasn't the kind I wanted. I went back to her house a few weeks later. It was small, quiet, smelled like lavender and dust. In her bedroom, I found more journals. Dozens. I didn't read them. Not yet. But I sat on her bed, held one in my lap, and whispered, "I'm sorry." It was the first real conversation we'd had in years. And she wasn't even alive to hear it. The weeks after reading the journal felt like learning to breathe again. Everything I had believed about her, about my childhood, was shifting beneath my feet. I didn't know how to hold the anger anymore. It had been my armor for so long, protecting me from the sting of abandonment. But now it felt heavy and unnecessary. I started walking in the evenings, no headphones, just the sound of the wind and my own thoughts. I passed the houses with glowing porches, kids laughing in backyards, parents yelling, dinners ready from screen doors. And I'd wonder what it would have been like, what kind of person I might have been if things had gone differently. But then I'd remember, she did the best she could with what she had. And maybe that counted for more than I gave it credit. One evening, I called Marla. She answered on the second ring. "Emily?" "I read the journal," I said. There was a pause. "You okay?" I nodded, then realized she couldn't see me. "Yeah, I think so." We talked for almost 2 hours. She told me stories I had never heard about my mother as a teenager, about how she'd saved up for months to buy a guitar she never learned to play, how she used to write lyrics in the margins of her textbooks, how, after I was born, she refused to let anyone else hold me unless they'd washed their hands 3 times. She loved you, Marla said, even when she didn't know how to show it. I know that now, I whispered. Grief is strange. I thought I wouldn't feel anything. But once the truth came in, it cracked something open in me. I started dreaming about her. Not as the woman I yelled at on the porch, but as the version of her I barely remembered, spinning in the kitchen, singing off-key. A month later, I decided to go back. Back to Tulsa. I wanted to see the house we lost. The park we used to walk to. The diner she worked at for almost 6 years. It was all smaller than I remembered. The house was painted a different color now. The tire swing in the front yard was gone. But the tree was still there. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, watching it sway in the wind, wondering how many times she had watched me from the window, too scared or too sad to join me outside. I went to the library. The same one where she said she used to read parenting books in the dark. I sat at a corner table and cried for a woman who had spent years trying to figure it all out on her own. That night, I stayed at a cheap motel. Couldn't sleep. So I started writing. At first, it was just fragments. Memories. But then the words kept coming. The things I never said. The things I wished I had. I wrote a letter. Mom, I spent 10 years hating you. 10 years blaming you for the kind of person I became. I told myself you didn't love me, that you were selfish, that I didn't matter to you. But I was wrong. You were drowning. And somehow you still kept me afloat. I was so busy looking at what I didn't have that I didn't see the invisible work you did every day just to keep the lights on, the water running, the walls around us. You weren't perfect. But neither was I. You were a mother. And now I see you. I folded the letter and placed it between the pages of her journal. It didn't feel like enough. But it felt real. A few weeks later, I started going to therapy. I didn't go to forgive her. I went to understand myself. And in the process, I realized something else. For years, I thought I had escaped my mother's life, that I was nothing like her. But the truth is, I was following the same path. I avoided relationships. I shut people out. I poured myself into work. I believed I had to earn love through independence. I was living in fear, just like she had. Fear of being seen. Fear of needing someone and being disappointed. Breaking that cycle took more than just a journal. It took time. It took truth. And it took learning how to let go of the version of her I'd created in my head, the villain, the failure, the ghost. I started volunteering at a women's shelter once a week. The first time I walked in, I saw a woman curled up in a chair, hugging her knees, eyes wide and empty. She looked like my mother. I sat down beside her and just listened. Sometimes that's all we need. Just someone to listen. It's been 3 years since she died. Sometimes I still get angry. Grief isn't linear. Healing isn't neat. But now, when I hear Fleetwood Mac, I don't feel bitterness. I feel her, dancing barefoot in the kitchen, singing off-key, lavender in her hair. And I sing along. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive myself for the years I spent hating her. But I've learned to hold both truths at once. She hurt me. And she loved me. I don't think those things cancel each other out. I think they sit side by side, like old friends who've stopped needing to argue. And in that space, I've found peace. Not perfection. Not resolution. Just peace. Enough to whisper into the silence, wherever she is now. I see you. I understand. And I love you too.